Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another tarot journal with me. I was working in my journal today, and the prompt for today was think of something that you are proud of and draw a card. And so the first thing that came to mind for me was actually this channel and the connections that I have made through it. And I'm just really thankful for that. I'm really grateful for everybody's continued support. And so I was thinking about that, and then I drew my card and I drew the 9 of Wands. So I thought this is kind of a perfect one to do a journal with me. So I generally do them the day before so that the cards are a little bit more relevant, but it really doesn't matter. So to start with, I'm going to cut my card out, and usually I scale them down a little bit smaller like you can see here with yesterday's, but I just thought this one was pretty perfect, and so I actually made a color copy of it full size. So today I thought we would just put this in my journal together so that you can kind of see how I am working in this journal. I'm going to go ahead and clip the corners. I think, yeah, the bigger ones need a medium. Kind of like trimming a tarot deck, right? And so I'm not really going to do a ton of writing journaling for this particular prompt. So I thought we'll use this card as our base, and I'm actually going to incorporate some cloth and stuff into this particular one so that you can see how I add that to my journal. You can see I have some here. Sometimes I do sew them in. And we'll see how I would go about doing that in a journal like this. So really the key is once your journal is bound, I mean, I could take this out and I could very carefully sew around the page, but it's easier to just create what they call clusters that you can basically create ephemera clusters, and then you can glue those onto the page. So they are actually created separately from the page itself, and then you just basically glue them on, and that allows you to do all that fun sewing, that decorative stuff, without actually trying to sew into your journal that you've created. So you can see here I did actually sew on this before I bound it all together, and that's one of the reasons why I like creating my own inserts. But you can also, sew on them this way as well. So that's what we're going to do today. We're actually going to do something a little bit more crafty. It's going to be less about the actual reading and more about the focus on the card. So like I said, I'm not going to do a ton of writing or anything. Actually, probably not going to do any of that on camera. We're just going to create the cluster for this so that I can show you how you can kind of incorporate some of those little tactile elements into your journal without actually having to try to put your journal through a sewing machine. Like for some journals that just wouldn't work, right? Like a hardback journal where you couldn't take sections out of it, that just really wouldn't work. Hopefully the sun isn't going to give us any trouble because I have the window open, and the sun is it's coming in and out of the clouds. So anyway, what we're going to start with here, I have a whole bunches of stuff going on here. This is my little ephemera bag for all of the scraps and the papers that I intend to use in this journal. Now, it's not the only things I use in this journal, but anytime that I'm working in this journal and I have a scrap, it gets thrown in here. So this is all the stuff that I use to not only create the insert, but all the stuff that I've been using to decorate the pages, so that each time I go to sit down and work in this particular insert, I just grab my ephemera bag for it, and then I don't have to go searching through all of my supplies. So that's one of my tips that I definitely recommend. If this type of crafty journaling is your thing, totally make an ephemera bag for each of your journals that you're working in. That way you can just kind of grab, and if you're like me and you've got 900 craft supplies, it can be hard to sort through them all to try and figure out what you want to create or what you want to work with. So I think I definitely, because it's the 9 of Wands, I want to incorporate this fabric in here. And this is just a remnant from a bag that I made. And I've actually coffee dyed this remnant. So it was white before, and I've made it dark. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to use this as our center point, and then I'm going to create a cluster of things around it. Okay, so I'm going to use this So we're going to do some of this, and I'm going to do some sewing, and I think I want to just like, I think I want to use this kind of as a base. I don't really get any flower if I go that way, but there's not really any flowers on this particular card, right? It's all leaves, so I think that actually works. And I'm going to trim it down because it's a bit large. Now, if you like this tattered look, snip it off and then tear it, and that's what gives you that super tattered look. You could also iron it, but I usually don't, mostly because I don't have an iron out and like handy, and that requires I like go into my laundry room and get all that out, and I just don't have time for that. I just don't have time for that. Don't want to do it. I kind of like this bee. So now at this point, what I'm going to do is I've got this kind of as my base, and I'm going to kind of start layering things around it. I do need to check real quick and make sure that, does it fit? It does. Okay, but that doesn't leave me any room to write. Like, I do want to write a little bit. So we're going to make it a little bit smaller. So maybe we'll tear a piece off there. And the great thing is these can all be used in like that's what this is. This is a little torn remnant. And if you don't like all this, like, you know, raggedy stuff, you can totally cut it. I just kind of like, I like the raggedy look. So kind of like that. And then it does sometimes get a little hard to tear when you get closer to the end. Some fabric is better than others. Okay, pull off all the stringies. I could also ink this. Like, you can totally use your distressed ink on this too. And you can see here I can actually ink all these edges. Which, now that I kind of did a little space of it, I kind of have to do at least a little bit or it's going to look weird. So we'll just ink a couple of different little areas. I'm not inking the whole thing, although you certainly could. And that just inks those little edges there. Okay, so like some of this, like stragglies, you can, like some of that you can take off. You don't need all of that. Well, I don't need all of that. Maybe you do. Okay, so that is better. That gives me, I need a place to at least write the prompt, right? Which I can do there. And I think that that's good. What I could also do, if I wanted to make this something that I could have some more writing on it, which now that I'm thinking about that, I kind of thinking I want to go that way. I can make this like a flip out or a flip up, and then I can add a note card underneath so that I can write on that. And I kind of like that idea, actually, because I do want to write a little bit, but I really want all of this fabric. So that means that, first of all, I need to get this stuff out of the way. I need to probably either ink or cover the back of this so that, actually, if I do it as a pin, like a brad, then I don't have to worry about that. I can just move it. And I've done that a couple times in this journal, as opposed to making it a flip up. Maybe we'll do that. Then I can just flip it out of the way. That still means that I need some kind of a journaling card here to actually write on. So for that, I'm actually going to use an index card because it has some stability to it, right? It's not like just a blank sheet of paper. And I'm gonna grab out my little stamper board. This is just a piece of cardboard that I've covered in wax paper so that I can stamp on it. You could also put this on the back of your card and basically turn your card into like what they call a journaling card, but I am kind of preferring it to be a slidey thing. And then we get like a 2-for-1 here. We're gonna see how I add fabric and sewing and all of that, and we're going to see how I added a brad in. So exciting stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna take my distressed ink and I'm going to like ink this up because otherwise it's like white and it doesn't match anything in my journal. Now, do a little self promo here. If you like videos like this, definitely check out my crafting channel, because that is more what this is about. It's like crafting and journaling and I don't know, whatever else. It's kind of my channel of whatever's on my desk and whatever I'm working on, that's what I put up there. You know, and because this has some gold in it, I'm gonna add a little bit, just a little bit of gold too, just because. So basically that is now gonna get glued down to this. And then I'm probably gonna stitch over it. So that's gonna be under here. Just need to make sure that I leave room for my little brad to go up here, which I'm gonna have to be careful or it's gonna end up cutting into my 9 of Wands. I have teeny tiny ones, so I can use those. So basically I'm gonna stick a brad here and then you can pull it back and I'll be able to have my writing. Right, that's the plan. Let's just see here. So if I had that there, that, yeah, I think that would totally work. I'm gonna add a little to it. This is coffee dyed tissue paper. Like I'm gonna get the like really wrinkly bits here. It's really not tearing well, so I guess I'll cut that. So we can put that on there. And kind of just start layering things up. That under there. I kind of like that it's a different shape. I don't want everything to be the same shape. That's this one. Oh, I like that one. Okay, that one right there. Now I gotta get all this out of the way, I think. So now what I'm gonna do prior to sewing this, because I wanna add some stitching, is I'm going to carefully unlayer. So these two are gonna go on top, and I need to make sure that anything underneath here is actually, you know, not blocking my writing area. So despite the fact that I am going to sew on this, I am going to add glue, and this is Fabri-Tac. And I have put it in a different bottle because I have found that, or I saw somewhere that if you put Fabri-Tac in a what is this? An icing bottle. That's what it is. I can't get my words out today. In an icing bottle, and you just plug it up with a pin, then it keeps it from oozing all over the place. So like this is a little pin I just made, and I put some charms on it so it's easy to get in and out. You just pop that in there, and it keeps it like fresh, right? So it doesn't go bad, but it also keeps it from oozing all over the place, which is really nice. Okay, so this is gonna go here, but I want to make sure that like I am getting it in the right place. So I'm thinking right about there, and I covered that, and now I need to get into it. The tip on the icing bottle also makes for a really nice thin bead of glue, which is really nice when you're doing delicate work. So then these need to go, that was the wrong thing to do because I meant to actually, do I even want that? I don't think I do. In fact, I don't want that. We'll use it for something else. Okay, so this should have gone underneath, and I need to ink it because it looks weird. I originally wanted it underneath there, but I mean, this works. Okay, so at this point, because this is our outer layer, what I'm going to do is now take this to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to throw some stitches around it, just to kind of add detail is really what the stitches are for. The glue really is what holds everything in place. The stitches of course help, but the glue is really what holds it in place, and the stitches really become decorative at that point. So I don't have room for my sewing machine and all this, so I'm gonna pop over there, sew this real quick, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have sewn on, basically I did the zigzag stitch around the journaling card. Again, it's mostly decorative, and then I did just a regular stitch around the whole outside of the larger fabric. And as you can see, like, I left stringies, so that's totally cool. I'm gonna trim that one off, and the ones on the back don't really matter a whole lot. You can, if you leave them long enough, you can get them to come around, but most of the time they just get glued underneath. But if you like the kind of stringy thing, you can leave the ones on the front. And then the ones on the back, I just snip those off because they'll just be in the way. Now, the one thing is I do need to look is, did I make it too big? And it does pop out, which I really don't mind, except for in these places where that's going to be an issue. So I can fold it back and glue it down. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then when I glue this to the page, then I can just tear off this excess. And that's kind of why I did just the tissue paper underneath, besides the fact that I think it looks pretty cool. I can just rip off the excess. So the thing that I need to do before I actually glue this thing down is to punch the punch my card. So I'm going to glue this down, and I'm going to cut it back out again because the fact that I'm going to stamp this with a brad means that I need to give it some stability. Not stamp, punch it, sorry, punch it with a brad. See, these things come in handy for lots of things. Okay, so now this is ready. I need to grab a brad, so I'm going to grab a little bitty one. And I've got like a brown thing going on, so I'm going to grab one of these brown ones. And again, these are little bitty Tim Holtz brads. And I have a little bitty hole punch. You can also use like an awl to paper punch it, but this is in general usually easier. Also, by going up a little bit higher, adding that cardstock, I can get in this, I should probably make sure it's even, get up into the border area and not clip into my words. I mean, that looks fairly even, right? That's even enough. So I'm just going to put a little hole in that. And then I need to put a hole in this. So I want to get it in here. I mean, it's not really going to matter because it's going to move around, but that looks about right. And I find that usually just using an awl is best. Trying to punch through fabric and all that is not the greatest thing in the world. Okay, so I'm gonna push that in there, and I'm gonna just flatten that down. So there's the brad on the back. So I'm going to basically go around my stitches and then pop a lot of glue in the center. You can also glue your brad down, and the card should still spin around it. But I usually don't. I usually just leave it. Oh no! See, it's all turning. Okay. So I want to get this pretty center in the page because I have made my journaling area on the inside now, right there. And I'm thinking that that is gonna need, that's tearing, that's the issue. And I'm going to, so basically I'm pushing my card all the way up. There we go. So you can slide that underneath there. So, okay. So I basically just using the washi to reinforce where I made that hole too big. So, okay, crisis averted. There's always a crisis every time. Every time there's a crisis. What I'm gonna do is actually use this to create a closure to see how it's popping underneath that flower right there. So if I glue down basically all around, but not underneath this flower, it'll create a little latch for it to sit under. Do that right there. Go underneath here. That's quite a bit popping out over the sides. I think I'm gonna leave this one and I'm gonna, it's like, do I wanna tear or do I wanna cut? I'm gonna just tear that. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's take a look at the final page we created. So I created this big cluster with the tissue paper and fabric. This is my card that I drew for the day, and I just pasted it on the cardstock that I cut out to reinforce it, and I clipped it on here with a brad. Now, of course, before I did all of that, I added some of the text and I added the journaling card underneath so that I could write my reflections for this card after I stamped it. Sewed this all together, and then I used this little piece of ephemera to create a little lock for it, or a little latch, so it just slides under there. The rest of the flower is glued down. So there you go. There's a look at how you add some sewing to a bound journal by using those clusters that you sew separately, and then you paste them or glue them into your journal. And we also created the little hinge. We're using the little brad with the sort of hidden journaling space. And then we created a little latch for it out of this little guy. So overall, I'm really happy with the way it came out. It's so much fun to be able to create pages like these in my journal. Yes, this is very, very elaborate, and you know, I don't always have time to do things to this extent. But you can see here, like on the other side, all I did on this side, just to kind of show you the difference, is I just made a color copy of the card. I pasted some a piece of a book page, I pasted a piece of fabric, and I did some stamping along the side, and that was it. And the rest of it is all just writing that I included in there. So it doesn't have to always be this fabulous, really elaborate page in your journal, but for me, it's kind of fun to have those every once in a while. The thing you do have to watch is these brads create a lot of bulk in your journal, so it can be really hard to write on the other side of the page. So if you're going to have a lot of writing that you're going to do on the other side, you might want to write it on something separate and then glue that in, because this bulky thing can cause some issues when you're trying to write on the other side. So just something to keep in mind. But it looks so pretty, and I love the way it looks, and I like creating these little, I don't know, pocket areas. I think I talked about that in my my May journal flip through, but they're just a lot of fun to do and a lot of fun to work with. Thank you for joining me for this tarot journal with me. You will find links for most of the products that I've used in this video in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this process and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.